So where would you like to start? Do you want Nick to kind of provide just an overall background of kind of where Nuance's healthcare division is today and the technology that we're kind of bringing to market and focused on as, providers transition to value-based care?
Yeah, that sounds good. Usually most of my questions there, because I saw that from one of your previous emails that you probably saw that I record the interviews, but I don't know whether you've listened. Most of my questions are usually fairly general, so it leaves the questions kind of open. So this way, the person who I'm interviewing can talk about anything that they want to with their product line.
Yeah. All right. So, Nick, do you have any questions before he hits record?
No. I'm happy to sort of kick off. I will say in direct response to some of the things that you were citing. In part, I'm not terribly surprised to hear that we've got hundreds of thousands of clinicians using our technology, but they're not aware of all the other capabilities. And that was best demonstrated just recently. We appeared in one of the sort of top 5 best investment choices, from a health IT perspective. And I forget which list it was, but it's one of those sort of quiet companies that, not everybody knows about. And, that's one of the things that we're really trying to address, and, appreciate the opportunity to present that and talk to you about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So so why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? Because I read a little bit about read your LinkedIn profile. It was very intriguing. So why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and maybe a little bit about Nuance's medical product as well?
Absolutely. So I'm a clinician by training. I practiced clinical medicine for a number of years, and then through a number of sort of choices and tacky events, ended up in health IT, and did so at a time when health IT was in the form of bricks, or they were called mobile phones at the time, and PC-based computers with original green screens, and even did some mainframe programming. So I sort of cut my teeth in the era when technology. I could see the benefits of technology, and many people could, but we weren't able to apply them in part because I think the hardware and the content hadn't caught up. By fortune, I sort of arrived at this perfect storm of both innovation from a technology, hardware, and software standpoint, as well as sort of what I would say or consider be the government's economic incentives being aligned in terms of helping save money while providing better, higher quality care, and indeed the sort of continued fulfillment of the doubling of processor power every 18 months is defined by Moore's law, and it continues to amaze me that we still sort of keep on track with that, and that's really sort of created an environment that provides tremendous opportunity, and in the healthcare scene, I think especially so. If I was to sort of pick one area that was really sort of emerging as this exploding concept and opportunity, it's the sort of mobile health environment. You can't. Sometimes I'm just amazed that I can't stand anywhere, sit anywhere, do anything. Even when I'm driving, I know people shouldn't be, but they are. They're looking at their mobile phones. They're looking at their technology. It's this constant attached device. And in the healthcare world, that sort of it opens up possibilities, but creates some challenges, specifically with the interaction with those devices. And I think that's the intersection point that Nuance fits in a number of ways. So we're well known, as you described in the imaging world. I think we've sort of absolutely slam dunk dominated the sort of radiology documentation, and it was very specific to this sort of quiet environment. There were no patients involved, it was just images, so you could have clinicians focusing, and we optimized that workflow to such an extreme that all the resistance points that we heard from clinicians who said, no, it will take me longer, it's not what I want to do, I'm here to read x-rays, not speak to a computer or be a typist or any of those things. And I want to say 98, 99% of those reports are now completed using some form of our technology, front end or indeed in a limited sense, the back end technology where they dictate and goes to a process and then comes back later. That experience is sort of broadened out, and we see that absolutely in all of healthcare IT. The enablement of documentation without requiring our clinicians to be data entry clerks, burdening them with this sort of typist, hunt and click process that, for the most part, limits the information you can capture. I think most people would agree that the narrative contains the richest detail about the clinical experience. I talk about this frequently, but I think it's a very telling point that Henry VIII's medical records remains one of the best kept medical records of his time. And it was because it was a narrative document that people described conditions, and we still mine that today. Had they used point and click and lists and drop downs and buttons and so forth, the doctors of the time would have been presented with the pox, consumption, or other, and that would be the limit of our understanding of his medical record. We now know, or have a fair idea, that he was probably a diabetic, and many of his family members were. And we get that from the richness of the narrative, and that's still true today. The point at which, cookbook medicine becomes appropriate is the point at which we've learned everything we need to know about medicine, the human body, treating disease, and so forth. And I think we're still a light years away from that point, and continue to expand our knowledge, and the ability to expand that knowledge and make useful decisions based on that requires that we use narrative documentation, and that's not most effectively captured using keyboard and mouse and structured lists. So we bridge that divide, but importantly, with what we term clinical language understanding, it's our form of natural language processing on steroids. We extract out all of the content. We tag that information against controlled medical vocabulary so that the drugs are coded, so that we know that brufen is the same as ibuprofen, is the same as any number of trade names. We understand dosage and values, and we turn that narrative into clinically actionable information or medical intelligence that can then be used in these electronic medical records, used in knowledge-based systems, and so forth. And we're doing that today. We do that very effectively. But the mobile health or the mobile platform transforms this and says, let's do this anywhere. Why do I need to be at a desktop? I just saw a report last week that talked about the demise of desktop PCs and the struggle for many of the PC manufacturers. They're sort of losing huge market share. I don't think they'll go away, to be clear. But I think that the mobile platform will continue to sort of expand into our world. We're seeing other innovations. And the one thing that remains challenging in that mobile platform is interacting with these tools. The screen tends to be small. It doesn't matter how big your phone is. And, we've sort of seen the growth, the shrinkage, growth, all of those variations. And, what suits varies by individual and the use case. But the one truism I would suggest is that interacting with those systems is quite often easiest with your voice. And that was ably demonstrated by Siri and the Apple iPhone. I think that really sort of exploded the concepts of a true speech understanding onto the general stage. And we're applying that now with the combination of our natural language processing or clinical language understanding and these mobile platforms to offer this intelligent interaction, very Siri-like, but for healthcare, so that we can offer real-time feedback, provide real-time understanding about coding and documentation requirements that clinicians are not experts about, and then add, additional value-based information to that interaction, making it as easy, almost sort of passive process. And I think the ultimate goal here is to reduce that to this interaction that says, here is, patient and physician. They exchange, and, I can focus on the patient, which is really what the patients come in for. And the technology is passively listening to both parties and extracting that information and putting it into electronic medical record and applying evidence, providing feedback. Right now, through mobile tools, we'll see other variations on that theme, and offering this great way of capturing information in the easiest way, but then offering this added value so that clinicians become freed up to focus on the patient, and the patient is given all of the attention versus the current status where, quite often we're defocused. I'm willing to bet if you've interacted with a clinician recently, if they had any electronic system, I bet they spend a lot more time on that than they did on looking at you and interacting with you.
I was amazed at how far the technology has come, and that it was somewhat intuitive, where it could not only do dictation and maybe fill out forms and cut down on the amount of time that doctors have to spend on filling out paperwork, but it was also intuitive enough to be able to determine, help with diagnosis. And so I saw that as a huge advantage to any physician that would be able to use your product. Now,
I 100%. I mean, I think, over the course of the last several years, but for the longest time, medicine was delivered much like this sort of Oracle or the Wizard of Oz concept. You went to the font of all knowledge, and that would be the physician. He knew everything. He remembered everything. As things moved, changed, he updated. He applied all based on the inputs that you gave him, and served up his expert opinion, and that's still true. The problem is that the amount of knowledge has vastly exceeded our capacity to absorb it, but more importantly, to update and keep up with all the changes. And there's lots of evidence of that in all of the journals, and there's even sort of basic anecdotal evidence that sort of suggests that, depending on who you see first, can be a big determinant of the therapy, but that may not be the best therapy for you, if you take all of the data into consideration. I think the medical profession struggled with that, certainly initially. That was a sort of transition from I am the expert and, I deliver knowledge. And, bear in mind that medical textbooks historically were protected. You as a general member of the public were not entitled to go look at medical textbooks. There was a protected section of the library. I mean, we live in an information age where, the information is available and people are accessing it, rightly so, and they're becoming engaged participants in that healthcare delivery. But, that's a scary concept for many clinicians, because suddenly you question what's my value, and I don't think that that's diminished. All that's happened is that we need a different methodology, a different mode, and much of what you describe is central to that, where we have tools that extract and understand and help to make sure, and it's simple things in some instances. It's as simple as, did we do an HB1AC on the diabetic patient in the last 3 months? Because if we didn't, we're not delivering the best possible quality of care. It can be, urgent things where we have drug alerts, and most of the allergies, most people catch those, although there are instances where they get caught by systems, but it's much more the complexity of pharmacology these days and the number of drugs that people are on. And, can you be aware of every single contraindicated drug combination? I doubt it. Providing support to make sure that we deliver the best possible care passively so that the clinician focuses and gets presented. And what you end up with is the technology becomes a partner to that. They become the curbside consult that says, hey, I got all of this information, you've directed it this way, but, there's some additional things that I think you might want to consider.
Yeah. Now, so with Dragon Medical, on the website it says it can be used anywhere from small to mid-sized physicians, mid-sized physician practices. So a lot of the stuff that you've mentioned, it sounds like for larger clinics, hospitals. Can this also be used for like a general practitioner that just has a small practice? Would it be good for them as well?
Absolutely. I think this fulfills clinicians any place, any time. And that's the beauty of the cloud-based technology that offers you access to this no matter where you are. You have this capacity to access information and knowledge in any location and any opportunity that is open to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, what kind of price point does Dragon Medical have? How much does it cost for a physician to be able to use your product?
I can't get into specific pricing, in part because that very much depends on the circumstance. I mean, we have box-based products, but most of this is delivered in solutions that offer integration in environments that are typically integrated in other people's applications. So we have a wide range of pricing methodologies.
Okay. So probably the best thing for them to do is contact Nuance directly and find out what the pricing would be for their particular practice, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So where can they find out more information about Dragon?
Nuance.com/healthcare is the best place to start.
Okay, and I assume there's probably contact information on there, or maybe forms that they can fill out to get more information and that sort of thing, right?
Absolutely, depending on where they're coming from, the sort of practice, there are lots of different ways of sort of entering into the system. Imaging is a separate environment because that's quite unique in terms of the way that people approach it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, you gave me a lot of great information. Is there anything else that you'd like to say?
No, I think that's it. We're obviously very excited by the innovation and what this brings to the table. I think we open up the opportunities of mobile health. We open up the access for clinicians to be able to derive value from all of these tools, and importantly, improve quality whilst saving costs, and allow the clinician to focus on the patient versus focusing on the technology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you.